So you're up, Jonathan.
Thanks, Sarah. Evening, everybody. This is Jonathan from Start Early. It's good to see such a big Zoom. I said it when we met in January, but it's incredible to see so many early intervention providers gathered in one virtual space, given how busy your workloads are right now. We have invited a couple of legislators to come. We'll keep checking the chat to make sure that they get here. This is a session day in Springfield, so we're always dealing with competing schedules and committee hearings that go long or get in the way of things. So if they're not here by the time we kick it over to them, we'll maybe hold their spot for the agenda and come back to them. But I am happy to be here to talk a bit about the state budget. For those who are on the first call about a month ago, I spent a fair amount of time detailing the process by which the state budget comes together every year. And, we talked in late January in anticipation of the governor's budget address, which happened last week down at the state capitol. And, we heard rumblings about what might be in that budget proposal, but the governor's announcement of his Smart Start agenda, and specifically the administration's proposal to increase funding for the early intervention program, was really, really amazing to hear. And so I'm excited to be here to talk about it. And then to remind you that the governor's budget proposal is just a proposal. And the real work now is to make sure that the General Assembly appropriates the funds laid out by the administration last week. So just before we get into the specifics of early intervention, I'm sure you all saw that the governor did introduce a plan, what the administration is calling Smart Start Illinois. It is a comprehensive, multi-year strategy aimed to expand and strengthen the state's early childhood system and support the workforce behind it. Specifically for FY24, the governor's office proposed over $300 million in new state funding for our key early care and education programs, like childcare, preschool home visiting, and the early intervention program. You all, I know, care about everything early childhood, but specifically care about the EI program. And so we want to focus our conversation today on EI. The governor's office asked the General Assembly to appropriate an additional $40 million in state general revenue funds for EI in the FY24 budget, which would start July 1st, 2023. Just for context, the state appropriates around $116 million in general revenue funds for EI in the current FY23 budget, meaning that a $40 million increase would amount to about a 35% increase in total state funding for the program, which, I've been working here at Start Early for 10 years. I've got colleagues who've been working at Start Early for much longer than 10 years, and we've never seen an administration ask for that kind of investment in the EI program in 1 year. To me, what was even more exciting outside of the funding request was the highlighting of EI as a key program in our state system right at the top of the budget address. I think it was the third program referenced in an hour-long budget presentation, so which I think, I can't even remember another time where EI was mentioned in a budget address, much less right at the top. So, I said this to some of the folks involved in this work already, but it's kudos to all the tremendous advocacy that you all have been doing and continue to do, that the administration recognizes how important making sure that the workforce in EI is supported, but also making sure that the program has enough money to function. With that $40 million, the administration has proposed a 10% rate increase for providers. They talked about wanting to make sure that they can address some of the challenges around service coordination, which I know we've all talked about, and we've been talking with legislators for a while now. And then they've also talked about making sure that the Department of Human Services has enough money in the EI budget to accommodate a growing caseload, which is something that we are very excited to see. I think, we need to be serving more kids and families in this program. And so to do that, the department needs more money. And so, that's what the administration has laid out. As I said at the top, every year the governor's office puts out a budget proposal, and then, but the General Assembly is the branch of state government that appropriates funds. And so what's exciting is that I think the General Assembly is going to be working from the governor's Smart Start budget proposal as a baseline for discussions. And so it's a lot easier to get money out of the state when you start from a $40 million increase, as opposed to start from a proposal that level funds the program or even cuts the program. So we've got a really great opportunity over the next few months to continue to educate legislators about the importance of the early intervention program, to continue to educate legislators about the need for investments in early intervention and the early intervention workforce. And we have a governor and an administration that has prioritized EI more so than anyone in recent memory, and has already, if you've seen the news, been out talking about the Smart Start proposal. They've had plenty of visits to early childhood programs across the state, even since last week. So I think there's a lot of exciting opportunities for us to continue this advocacy over the next few months. I'm looking at okay, so I know we got Rep. Hirschauer in the Zoom, which is great. And I think Senator Pacioni-Zayas is still in Senate Revenue, so she's going to jump on when she can. But why don't I give a quick intro to one of our key champions in the House, Rep. Mara Hirschauer. Rep. One, in a minute, I'll have you come off mute and say hello. Rep. Hirschauer represents the 49th House District, which is made up of a lot of really great towns in the western suburbs, West Chicago, Batavia, parts of Elgin, parts of Naperville. Rep. Hirschauer is a vice chair of the House Early Childhood Committee. She also sits on appropriations committees that have jurisdiction over the education budget. And for our purposes, what's really exciting is that, she sits on the Appropriations Committee for Human Services, which has jurisdiction over the EI program. She herself is a former educator and a champion of all things early childhood, but has really worked tirelessly over the last several months with us to try to increase appropriations for the EI program and also make sure that providers see raises, because we know how difficult it's been over the last several years to retain providers in the field, but also attract new ones to serve kids and families in the EI program. So we wanted to give Rep. Hirschauer just a few minutes to say hello. And I know the EI Grassroots Alliance is interested, Mara, in hearing about ways in which their advocacy will be impactful over the next several weeks and months. And so, maybe from your perspective, activities that we can engage in that will help make sure that that $40 million actually ends up in the state budget that's approved in May. So if you're around and able to say hello to the group, we've got 190 early intervention providers here. Excited to see you. So.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you for that introduction, Jonathan. And I'm just honored to be on the Zoom with so many impactful service providers. Jonathan did a really good job introducing me. I also, as an educator, started my career in early childhood, not as a service, not providing services like you, but just in started in the 2s and 3s classroom, and really love the little ones. And I'm also a parent of 3 children, and my son receives speech services. So I feel, I just feel like I understand, both from a parent's point of view and from an educator's point of view, how impactful your work is to families. And I know how difficult it was during COVID to have to give those services remotely, to have interruptions, to, once you were getting back into households, for putting your own health on the line, as well as the health of the loved ones you live with. So I'm really happy, as Jonathan said, that the governor really lifted you up and prioritized you in the budget. Jonathan did a great job of laying out the budget. But to hear, EI service providers mentioned on the House floor like that actually gave me goosebumps, because in the last General Assembly, I worked really hard just to get folks to notice that budget item line, and just reinstate you to where you were on that budget before COVID. And it felt a little bit like pulling teeth sometimes when I was going to talk to my colleagues. But then this year we had the governor stand up and really tell everybody where our priorities lie in Illinois, and they lie with our children and our families and the people who support our children and families. So like Jonathan said, it's easier to start with something like we have right now than to start with nothing, which is what we were doing the past couple of years. So I think what you're doing right now, gathering together as a large group, whether it be on Zoom to talk to legislators, or I don't know if you're planning a lobby day, but we had a bunch of nurses down here today, a bunch of students from the University of Illinois system. For me, it makes a big impact. You know, I know it's time out of your schedule, and I actually attended lobby days as a citizen myself before I became a legislator. So I know the 3-hour drive down to Springfield can be a lot, but it's impactful, and it also lifts you all up. I think there's something really special about you all being together in the rotunda with a shared goal, you know, that not only energizes us legislators, but energizes you. So lobby days, making appointments with your legislators. I often will have 15-minute Zoom calls with people from my district, and that I find really impactful too. So reach out to your local legislators and let them know that you're watching the budget, and let them know what you need. So don't be afraid to stand up and use your voices, because they're very powerful.
Thank you, Rep. Hirschauer. We do have an early childhood advocacy day scheduled on April 18th, and I know we're going to share some details about that later in the call. But I do think what Rep. Hirschauer said really rings true to us, like reaching out to your local elected officials to talk to them about the governor's proposal for early intervention, but also just his interest in their increasing investments for early childhood would be a really great way to advocate for yourself as a provider, but also for your community over the next few months.
Yeah, wait, I'm just gonna, you know, the governor has been saying a lot that he wants Illinois to be the best place to raise a family. And you all are critical to healthy families and to making our state the best place to raise a family. So let's just keep elevating that and let your local legislators know that, you know, it's a priority in our state.
Sarah, if you'll indulge me, I see that Senator Pasiones has been able to jump on too. So for those who don't know Christina, you're one of the few. She is the state senator for the 20th district, which represents a lot of the northwest side of Chicago, Logan Square's finest. She has a long history of advocacy in early childhood, both with the Latino Policy Forum, with the Erickson Institute. She also served on the State Board of Education. She's been a longtime champion of all things early childhood, but specifically early intervention. What's exciting is that she sits as the chair of the Early Childhood Committee, newly formed Early Childhood Committee in the Senate. So we've got Rep. Hirschauer over there on the House holding things down, and Senator Pasiones in the Senate. She also sits on some appropriations committees that have jurisdiction over early childhood programs. So without further ado, Christina, I'd love for you to say hello to over 200 EI providers.
I love it. This is awesome. Thank you all for allowing me to join you this evening and to see some of the faces, but basically, you know, be in community with you all. I'm so just inspired. I'm proud that there is a grouping of folks that are coming together. I love that you call yourselves the Grassroots Alliance. That's what's up. I mean, it's just everything. So I'm really thrilled that, you know, finally the news is out. I had to keep this news to myself for a few weeks and almost died during the process, because when I had a chance to meet with the governor at the tail end of January, and we were talking about, you know, his vision and the plan, and he kind of kept things high level, I text Jonathan to say, hey, okay, what's the budgetary ask on EI? And he's like, 23 million. I was like, okay, cool. So one of our other former colleagues who's now in the governor's office, he's another huge early childhood advocate, Samir Tana. He came up through Illinois Action for Children. He said, make sure that you say that number explicitly. And I was like, okay, good. So, you know, he's going through the whole plan. And I just said to him, I said, look, I'm not hearing you talk about early intervention. And I think it's incredibly important that that be also one of the main components of this particular program. And I said, you know, we have obviously done a few things over the past few years. We restored $7 million that was cut. not celebration, but at least we kind of got back up to where we needed to, at least at that baseline. I said, we've done some things legislatively to expand eligibility. And, you know, that's going to have a pressure on the system. But at the same time, we have not done right by early intervention, period, the end. When it comes down to it, and I know this not only because these are your talking points, but I experienced this. My son went through early intervention. He received speech as well as occupational therapy. And, you know, I'm fully aware of, you know, when we weren't able to make an appointment, my son's therapist did not get paid, right? They didn't get reimbursed for mileage. They did not get, they were not able to bill time where they are planning co-treatment. All of those things make a difference, on top of the fact that there was no hero pay during the pandemic. There were just so many issues, yet you all are about to, or will continue to get bombarded because there's more eyes on children, therefore more children being referred. And I know that, you know, in general, the overall field of early childhood, we have such a high turnover because the compensation is nowhere near where it should be, let alone full benefits packages, so on and so forth. So I laid all that out to him and said, look, you know, we really need to do right by early intervention. And your whole plan is going to be undermined if we do not make a meaningful investment. And that's where, you know, we're asking for $23 million. So fast forward a couple weeks later, he calls my cell, and you know it's him or it's a bill collector because it says no caller ID. So I was like, I'm gonna take my chances and answer. And, you know, he's like, Christina, it's JB Pritzker. And so I was like, hey, what's going on? He's like, do you have a minute? I was like, yeah, let me just get off another call real quick. I'm talking to some people over at Cannabis. He's like, no, call me back when you have time. I was like, no, just give me 2 seconds. So I switch over, tell them, get back over. And he's like, hey, you know, I wanted to just personally call you and tell you, you know, we're putting some final touches on the budget. We're trying to figure out, you know, how we get to your ask. I don't think we're going to be able to do 12 million. I really don't think we can do 23 million, but we're going to do 40 million. And I was like, what? I was like, you're kidding. And I like got chills and I was like, oh my God, you are about to change so many people's lives. He was like, I wanted to personally tell you because you made such a compelling case. And I really want to give you credit for that. And I said, you know what, Governor, it's not me. It's really the folks, you know, that are doing the work and them organizing. And I told him, because this was the day after, let me see, when I met with him, it was the day after you all first met. And I said, there were over 150 providers. They are organizing. They are going to come to Springfield. They're going to make their voices heard. We have an opportunity to really double down with them. So anyways, the point is that he was ecstatic. And then he was like, hey, I'm going to need you to keep this quiet. And I'm like, oh my God, how do I do this? And I was like, okay, I can do that. And he was like, really, just if you could. So fast forward the Sunday before the budget address, he calls me again and he's like, hey, do you have a few minutes to go over my remarks? And I was like, yeah. He's like, I'd like you to give me some feedback. So he went through all that. And then of course, I mean, I didn't have to tell him anything about early intervention because he had beautiful remarks in terms of what he laid out. And he just told me, he was like, I am so giddy. He's like, it's been so hard to keep this like under wraps. And I'm like, I know, I'm dying. You're killing me here. So anyways, the point is like, I think it's such an amazing moment that we have somebody like him in the position that he's in. And then we have folks like you all who have been like barely holding on, but saying like, let's band together and let's push together because this is the right thing to do. And then of course we have advocate groups such as Start Early, such as Raising Illinois, such as all of the various folks that come together to kind of rally and support and all of these pieces coming together. And then, you know, Rep. Hershar in the House, we've just hit it off and we would constantly be going back and forth at lame duck and veto trying to get things together. And I feel like this is our time. This is our time to really get this story out so many people fully understand the impact. I know that my son having early intervention from 18 months through age 3, and his therapists are still with him. He's now 8 years old, and I was thankfully in a situation where I had private pay insurance and I can continue to have them on board. In fact, I've had them review my bills. They give me all kinds of feedback. I get them involved in the whole process. But the point is that this is going to be a game changer in terms of generational change, really doubling down. And so I hope you all feel seen. And I think, it's really important that you are heard. And so we're going to be having some subject matter hearings in the early childhood committees, both of them in the House and the Senate. We're going to come together and do a series of subject matter hearings. The first one will be why? Why do we invest in early childhood? What's the importance, right? And then there's going to be 4 of them that focus on each of the components of Smart Start Illinois. And there'll be a prenatal to 3 one that will specifically have a segment where we're going to go into early intervention. So it'll be really important to have you all's voices at the table and to continue to do the work that you all are doing. Like I had brought and I shared with the governor your double-sided 1-pager, like those things work. That's my whole point. You're not doing this in vain. And so we just need to continue to keep close communication, continue to put the pressure on, to work with the champions, to support the folks who are kind of like on the sidelines, like, I don't know, they won't outright say they're not for the babies. They're going to come up with all kinds of other excuses, but we need to help them understand and bring them along. That's why I was doing these subject matter hearings. So there can't be any excuses that we really don't know what this is going to do, and so on and so forth. So I'll stop right there. But I'm just thrilled. And so stay tuned. You should be expecting that one that focuses on the prenatal to 3 to happen sometime like mid to late March. And then of course, you're always welcome to tune in to the other ones that happen. It'd be great to just have it. I mean, this is deep. We got 217 people on the line right now, right? I think we need to continue to show this type of force, because behind each and every one of you is a whole army of children, and then the community from which they come from and the families that support them. And so that has a multiplier effect in terms of what you all do to provide not only these children the support, but their caregivers and their parents the support to bring them along with their development. And obviously, if we're successful enough and we're able to do this, so that they don't necessarily need all the support and they can obviously live up to their greatest potential. So I'm thrilled to be in partnership with you all. I'm looking forward to us having, closer communication, and you all just let me know and feed me those details, because I do have things stay in my head and I have it in my back pocket when I need to like bring some stuff up. I love how y'all broke down like, oh, this is our hourly, but when we deduct this and when we deduct this and when we deduct this, that's how I operate. So I really appreciate you all putting that together.
Thank you, Senator. Not every senator reads everything that we send them, but Christina and Maura read everything we send them, which is exciting. I think the only thing I'll say before we hand it back off to the providers themselves for the rest of the agenda, well, one is thank you to Rep. Hirschauer and Senator Pacientes for your ongoing advocacy on behalf of the early intervention program, both the families involved in the program, but the providers who provide care to families in the program. It's exceptionally important to have you in those spots, and it's been a pleasure to work with you up to this point. I know we got a lot of work ahead. The other thing I'll say is that while a $40 million proposed increase is a historic amount of money for the EI program, we know that $40 million in the EI budget or a 10% rate increase would be great, but won't solve all of our problems. We're not naive enough to think that that's the case. And so I would encourage this group to continue to be meeting and thinking about how this is a really long-term multi-year effort to really build the early intervention program we know we need for kids and families. And we're there to help you with that. And hopefully we will continue to learn from you all along the way, because we've already learned an amazing amount of information and whatever. I'm rambling now. So Sarah, that's the Ledge folks side of things. You can take it away from us, but we're thanks again for having us. It's really, really great.
All right, let me get my screen shared here again. Thank you to the legislators. It really has been a long time coming for us to feel seen as early intervention providers, and it goes a long way to inspiring us to continue our fight and to be willing and ready to do more. So thank you for all your comments. I want to move on to some Alliance updates and just some general discussion here. We all know, because we are the boots on the ground, that wait lists are the reality for many families in early intervention. And so if you're here as a provider, it's because you love this system that you want to fight for more for these families and for this system. The primary cause of the wait list is the current provider shortage and also the lack of funding and appropriate salaries for service coordinators. According to our survey that we did in fall of 22, 41% of providers were currently considering leaving the EI system in the next year if working conditions didn't improve. And 42% of providers were considering or were actively decreasing their EI caseloads due to that pay disparity. I want to share an interesting inflation infographic here. I found this resource and it will be included also in the follow-up email today. 70/50 was approximately what you made per visit for a speech, OT, PT. This is not DT, but we do see you DTs. But this example is OT, PT, speech. This is what we made in the year 2000, about 70/50 a visit. Today, in today's numbers, that would be worth $122.48 based just on raises from inflation. So this goes through a really good graphic and explanation about that. So you can look at that on your own when you get the email. But the buying power of your dollar, so adjusted for inflation, starting at that 70/50, now is only buying us $37.72. And so if you're on the call and you're a provider or you're a business owner and you're wondering why the heck has this gotten so hard, I think this really demonstrates what is going on and why. A really neat thing about this resource was they went by city. And so at the end here, they even have Chicago listed as an example city, saying that inflation is about 2% a year. So if we had gotten 2% a year cost of living raises every year since 2000, we would now be making $112.35 per visit. And so that just really points out the disparity. Right now, we're making $76.96. So that is the disparity. And that is why in 2000, you could run a business and support your employees, or you could be a provider and afford your health insurance privately. And now it's very, very difficult. So that was one thing that we wanted to share and highlight here in our discussion. All right, I'm going to hand over to Paulina to discuss some different action steps, some things that we can do as providers. We heard the legislators talk about some of the things that are on this list already. So here we go. It's over to you, Paulina.
Thanks, Sarah. So for those wondering what's next, what can I do? One of the first things that we have listed on here is complete the post-event survey if you haven't already done so. And basically the survey is to help us figure out what kind of advocacy efforts, interest you, what would you be willing to participate in. It'll also add you to our email list, and you'll get any updates on advocacy opportunities or actions that are taking place. So that's a really great place to start. The next one that we really encourage everyone to fill out is their pay rate increase survey. And the reason that this one is so important is because this is what's going to help us determine exactly what type of pay rate increase everyone really needs in order to make an impact on the availability of services for families. So what's going to decrease those wait lists, what's going to draw more providers in, and what's going to keep them in the program. So this is a really important one that we really, really encourage everyone to fill out when they have the chance. The other thing that you can do is contact your legislators in order to urge them to approve that the governor's budget for the early intervention program. And you can do this easily through the Start Early Call Action link. And we encourage everyone to customize the email to specifically address early intervention, but we will also be sending a template for providers that specifically addresses early intervention after this meeting. But it's really easy. You just click on the link and you fill it out, you submit it, and it's really quick. The other thing that providers can do is distribute the virtual postcard to the early intervention families to share their stories with legislators. Sarah, I don't know if you want to pull it up so everyone can see what it looks like. But this is especially important for families, who have been impacted by the shortage of providers to share their experiences. And it's in English and Spanish, so it's something simple that everyone can do with their families. Share the link and the families can fill out those postcards.
All right. Sorry, Pauline.
That's okay.
We'll back up. Google's not cooperating. Okay.
No problem.
There we go.
Another thing that we really want to do is participate in some media outreach efforts with families. Contact any local news outlets. So if anyone has any connections to local news outlets or know of families who have been specifically impacted by the shortage, if they've been on wait lists for a really long time, this would be a really great opportunity for that, to especially just get that attention on the issue and really make it known. The next thing that we can do is continue to hand out those Equip for Equality state complaint forms. We've talked about this before, but for any families that providers know that are still on wait lists and are really impacted by the shortages, this is who you want to give these forms to. So, families like Shannon and Jesse, especially, these are people that would want to fill out these forms, not only to inform DHS of what's going on and the issues that are happening with the shortages, but also because they can get reimbursement for any private pay services that they were seeking or compensatory services for services that they missed in early intervention. And then if you are a provider who is leaving early intervention, we encourage you to consider sending a letter of resignation to Provider Connections and DHS and let them know why you are leaving and what would encourage you to come back as a provider. I think that would be really impactful. And some future engagement opportunities that will be happening is the Early Childhood Advocacy Day on April 18th. This is taking place in Springfield. So we understand that, this might be a hard ask for some providers. It is kind of a further drive, but it's a really important advocacy day. It's a really important event. This is where families and providers can meet with legislators. And as we all know, legislators get hundreds of emails, hundreds of phone calls every day. So I really don't think there is a substitute for face-to-face discussion where we can really appeal to them and let them know what our needs are, what the concerns are, what's happening with the providers on the boots on the ground. So this is a really big deal, especially because in the past, we haven't had a lot of advocates that came out to this day to really advocate for early intervention. So the greater number of providers coming out, the bigger the impact. So that's a really big one. And we will share more details about this day after this meeting as well. And as always, remember to participate in the ICHE Council meetings. There will be one coming up on April 13th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. The links will be shared on Provider Connections, but we will also be sharing them on Facebook as well. It's important for providers to continue to voice their concerns and express their needs. So it's virtual, it's easy to log on and participate. And as always, watch for any upcoming opportunities to share any social media links that you might see us sharing, continue to voice those concerns as you see them. So I will be passing this off to Sonia, and she will be closing off the meeting.
I think actually Karen is going to say something before me,
Okay.
and then we'll come right back. Last minute change.
Really quickly, I'm one of Jonathan's colleagues, and Zareen, who's been like expertly pushing everything into the chat. All of the links that you need that we'll email out after. So we all work on the Start Early team. But I think, you know, I'm just going to be really brief. These guys asked me to just acknowledge, and I hope you guys are all seeing that, like, nothing happens. This can't happen with one person alone, or even one group of people alone. And you know, we're here today, you know, with the opportunity that we have, knowing that we're going to need a lot more, but that we are seeing like this historic investment, largely because of the work that you did, starting with the change.org petition, lifting up your concerns. And I think having Start Early, be able to be aware of that. And thank you so much to Jonathan for being able to connect the group to the right folks, for us to be able to connect this group, not just to the legislators, but also to the Department of Human Services to lift up the concerns, for the families that are sharing their stories, for Raising Illinois, that if you're not part of, when you look at the postcard, you'll see a place to sign up for that. And maybe we can put that, we'll give you that information in the link as well, for being able to quickly pull together that postcard campaign, to Equip for Equality that's available and has positioned itself to support any family, regardless of income, for free, to file complaints or just talk them through the process to make sure that they understand the timelines that are at play. And to our legislative champions, who I'm so glad we're able to be here today so that you could actually hear from them directly how committed and passionate they are to be advocating alongside of you. I know that Senator Passione has said this, but it's going to be really important that we stick together and that we stay in this through the fiscal year and then through the implementation. You know, we need to get the money, and then we need to make sure that the things that you need to have happen with the money happen. And that some of the funding changes that you've talked about, not just the pay increases, but the changes around transportation, health insurance, missed visits, and all those things can get addressed. And I hope you do feel that your voices are heard, that you do have a way to influence this system and make changes. And I'm saying that knowing that a lot of this is long overdue, and that many of you have been serving families for decades, and it's fatiguing. So I'm hoping that we can feel a little energized leaving tonight and come back renewed to really take effective action. So I just appreciate all of you.
Awesome. Oops. Thank you, Karen. And to all of you providers out there, I just want you to know that you should be excited because your voices have been heard and what you do has value. You have been helping children across Illinois develop crucial language skills, enhance cognitive, physical, motor development, meet nutrition needs, dietary needs, and help with vision and hearing concerns. Our work with the families and the children of Illinois will save the state a lot of money in the long run. But more than that, we are helping parents understand and meet the needs of their children. And we are helping babies achieve and reach their greatest potential. We indeed have one of the most important jobs in the world. We should have regular pay raises and should be considered a partner in this therapy relationship. Continue to demand the best because you are worth it and what you do has value. And the children, and to the children and the parents, the state of Illinois, because of to the children and I just want you to know that the state of Illinois is better because you are here doing what you're doing for the children and the families of Illinois. Thanks for participating, and we will continue to provide updates.